Who's going to go first? Abayomi. Okay, let's hear from you.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Paul.
Good evening.
Yeah, my key takeaway from last class was the fact that maintenance scope, we as FM need to be interested in the specifics, as in breakdown. We should not just take whatever is coming to us as a lump sum. We should be interested in line items of the maintenance activities. So make sure to know what we are doing and get value for whatever money we are paying.
Super. Thank you so much. That was very good. If we can all do this, we'll straighten our maintenance practice. All this servicing that we are losing money on, we will no longer be doing servicing anymore. Every servicing must be broken down, and you must know exactly how much of that 1 million you are paying is going for oil, is going for cleaning, is going for filter, is going for whatever that's servicing. So kill off servicing. Somebody told me once to come and bring a quote for servicing UPS. I replied him that there's nothing to service the UPS unless he just wants to throw away his money. I said, what are the activities for repeat maintenance? He said it's just check record of voltage, amperage, and some of those parameters that it normally would give. Some of those systems have even automated system in the UPS unit that you can just plug in and download the data of how it's running, and you know, if they have external batteries, check the heads to see what the voltage ratings or readings are. He said, so what does that entail? I said, if you have standby person on site, let the person just be checking based on this checklist, and that's all. They're not to maintain more than that. And he was surprised because they know how many millions they'll be paying for maintenance of routine maintenance of UPS system and inverter system, right? So the moment you get into that service scope discussion, you'll find out that much of your so-called maintenance budget right now is being wasted. Thanks for that feedback takeaway. I need one more. Who's gonna go? Yes. Who was in class?
Hello, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So my take home, just to add to what first speaker earlier said, in why we need to be interested in what is going into the maintenance, we need to really understand the basics, the steps, what we need to know by getting our asset register, the inventory, and making a maintenance plan. We need to have record, we need to have a checklist that we aid our management by working around. So by us knowing all these details, we'll be able to know what we need to do as far as maintenance is concerned. Thank you, sir.
Super, that's good. And I was thinking I will get one of the ladies to speak. Since I didn't get one of the ladies to speak among the first two speakers, I'm going to ask that the lady, please tell me what you took away significantly from the last class, from those of you who are here. Abioye can speak, Bumi can speak. Who is there again? Ileana can speak. Who did I miss among the ladies here?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I was not actually in the class. I was not actually feeling well, so I didn't attend that class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, no problem.
I took permission from Madam.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough.
Okay. Hello, sir.
Yes, go ahead. Let me hear from you.
The last class you talk about the work order. Creating a work order. Then that's tracking. You talk about tracking device, tracking your work.
Yes. Yes.
That's a clue that, yes.
Yes, that's good. So even if you don't have an automated system in place yet, just design a work order paper that is serialized, has numbers, right? You can even get a local printer to print a work order booklet for you, where you can have certain information like, the area where the work is going to be done, the type of work, who would do it, how much it would take, the material that will go into it, how long it should take to fix, and then a section that has information where the building user or whoever mandated that work, or who is the user of that space, can sign and say, yes, I've seen that this particular activity has happened and I'm satisfied, to what extent, that's also indicated there. So that's important. We must all work with work orders, because it is the basis of maintenance record keeping. I have a plan, but what good is that plan if I'm not working the plan? If I want to show evidence that I'm working the plan, I need to have a work order system in place to show that I'm working the plan. So whoever I'm going to assign work to, I use a work order to communicate that. Whatever he's going to do, he records it inside, and it brings it back for me to update my plan and my reports that I have done the work that I need to do. So if something goes wrong in your facility and you have a work order management system, then you are fine. There will be no much story to deal with, because you are doing the required. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and get right into today's class. Sustainability and energy management. I've had all kinds of requests recently for solutions for energy efficiency. We started selling energy efficiency in Nigeria in 2017. We started by telling every organization. We reached out to at least 2,000 organizations to say, monitoring alone, lower level sub-metering to give you transparency into kilowatt hours consumed per circuit in your facility is going to save you at least 30% of your energy consumed. But because energy was highly subsidized then, and a lot of the cost going into energy seemed to be convenient, we didn't get much traction. In 2022, now the die is cast. Diesel has jumped suddenly from 300 to 600, right? And companies are beginning to realize how important it is to manage this cost. And so we're beginning to get, proposal is submitted in 2020. Can we please work on it? When it's submitted in 2019, can we look at it again? Can we do those metering? And now metering and all those solutions are coming, purely because it has hit the bottom line in a way that people are now beginning to face the reality. I've been to some hotels where they will tell you, for the rates we've been charging, we no longer can guarantee power around the clock, right? At a certain time of the day, we're going to put off the generator to save on diesel, because we can't afford to run the diesel on generators beyond these hours. That is the reality we are facing. But in discussing sustainability and energy management, we should not only think of it in terms of how it hits our bottom line, how it hits our profitability. We are responsible for sustaining the Earth's resources, keeping it in use or available for future generations. So our look at this topic as facility managers is both for save the organization so they don't go under because of high cost of energy and other materials we use, but also, and most importantly, be sustainable in your thinking and in your mindset so we can preserve the earth, which is our common inheritance. The Brundtland Commission of the United Nations came up with this definition for sustainability. It's development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So if we're taking out things from the earth, are we able to guarantee that there will be leftover and the earth can regenerate itself for future generations? And then we have sustainability categories of, areas or breakdown of how to assess or review sustainability focus for FM. This was done by International Facilities Management Association, breaks sustainability into energy, water, materials and resources, workplace management, indoor environment quality, quality of services, waste, and site impact. Starting with energy. Energy is always number one when it comes to sustainability. Why? Energy has become a key input to everything we do in life. In our built environment, in facility management, energy is, for most people now, is crossing the 50% line in terms of costs, depending on how you're getting your energy source. It's no longer something you can gloss over. So for energy, we're asking questions like, how much of it are we wasting? How much of it are we using efficiently and effectively, right? We're asking, what are the sources of the energy that we're currently consuming? Do we even know how much energy in terms of metrics we are using? Those things we're going to look at as we go on in this lesson today. Water is life, they say, right? But water is not an infinite resource. It is finite, can be exhausted, and you can see from time to time how certain countries and cities go into sudden water shortage. Even advanced economies, they can't do much about how much water is available in the aquifers underground and in streams around them. The world is 70% covered by water, but how good is that water for the use that we're talking about? How do we relate to water? We treat so much water and then we dump it. We use, after dumping so much chemicals in it, we use to flush the toilets and irrigate our gardens and wash the cars, right? Sometimes we need to think about what really goes into water. Water is drilled and pumped using energy. Water requires a lot of chemicals, both the good, the bad, and the ugly versions of them. And water, when it is not sufficient, can lead to all forms of operational disruption. And then materials and resources. Everything we use in our environment, especially for our maintenance and operations activities, come from one source or the other on the earth, right? And so we need to think about how much toxicity we are bringing into our spaces. We need to think about how much of these materials that we really need compared to what we are bringing on to use. And when we work as facility managers, we want to provide spaces and services that meet the needs of users of those facilities. And so the work processes that we, that we implement, are they sustainable work processes? What about the indoor environment quality? The air, how hot, how cold, how much moisture? There are set points that are healthy. If you have an indoor environment that is not healthy, you are creating not only environmental nuisance, but social nuisance in the form of ill health for people who occupy those spaces. And then quality of services. Services must be sustainable and minimize environmental footprints. And then waste, target zero waste that goes to landfills. So many FM organizations, departments, we all just seem to take the waste out of the client's space, dump it somewhere for some third party to come and leave, and we think that's all there is to waste management. If we don't start imbibing certain practices that helps us to segregate and recycle and reuse certain wasted materials, we are creating more problem for the earth, because sustainability looks at what is removed, that we use, which is basically energy, materials, and resources, right? And looks at the things we give out in terms of solid waste, effluent waste, other toxicity, and other things that we put in the environment that damages the environment. We also need to gauge the environmental impact and footprint of our buildings, operational processes, right? So all of those fumes that come out of our generators, the oils that we throw out, the sewage that we throw out, the refuse we throw out, the pavement we paved all over the place that reduces environmental cooling, for example, and reduces oxygen availability because we have cut down all trees and plants and we've paved up the whole place for easy maintenance like we do. Those have negative impact on our environment and we need to be very conscious of them. People are spending most of their time indoors. In fact, when we say 90% of people work indoors, if you think about it, for some people, it's actually 100%, or maybe 99%, because they come out of their houses and it takes a minute or two to walk into the car. Inside the car is indoors. You come out of the car and you walk into the office. Another 1 minute, right? And then you probably get back straight into the car on your way back and into the house. They can do that for days and days on end. The implication of that is that you really are an indoor person all the time. And air quality or indoor environment quality indoors is always worse than outdoors. If outdoors are terrible, the rest assured that the indoors are great in terms of the impact on the health of people. All right, so let's begin to relate with what we are responsible for as facility managers. The World Health Organization says that 30% of buildings have indoor air quality issues. I can tell you for free that this 30% is a global average. In Lagos, 80% of buildings have indoor air quality issues. In Port Harcourt, it's even worse. Why? We have soot in the air from all this pollution from industrial processes, transport systems, and so on and so forth. And then we now have an additional complication that comes from humidity indoors that creates fungal spores all over our indoor spaces. Every time you bring out your clothes from the cupboard and then you start dusting off those whitish stuff, you are dealing with fungal infection, and yet we live with it as if it's normal. Those things build up and can become significant sick building syndrome factors that causes illness for people who live and use facilities. And because we are responsible for what we take out of the earth and what we put back in the earth, we want to be responsible and accountable in such a way that we take out of the earth sensibly, right? In such a way that we're not depleting very quickly. And then we put back in the earth what can help regeneration, not what can cause more toxicity and more danger to the earth. Think about facility management, sustainability categories as input, processes, and outputs. Inputs are the energy, water, materials, and resources that we take out of the earth and we consume them using in our processes in providing workplace management, indoor environment quality, and quality of service. And when we are done providing all of this for our users, what do we get? Waste that goes out as outputs. The consideration for sustainability should be aligned with the triple bottom line, that profit alone, economic consideration, is no longer sufficient to determine an organization's performance or success. Social impact on people and environmental impact on the environment is key to an organization's success. So when an organization is trying to measure how good it is in terms of the work it does and the results it achieves, it shouldn't just be based on economic consideration. Social and environmental become feasibility. So you must make sure that you are balanced across these three bottom lines. to say you are sustainable. The same thing applies to our organization at the corporate level, and also apply to us in our department as FM. We need to tell ourselves we must operate sustainably. And to do that, we must be equitable, which is the intersection of feasibility between economic and social. We must be bearable. All activities and initiatives we implement must be bearable, which is the intersection between environmental and social. And then all our activities and operations must be viable, which is the intersection between the economic and the environmental. And then there are certain typical questions that we should be asking to know whether we are being equitable. For example, do the social benefits outweigh the cost of the initiative? If I am investing on a new lighting system, for example, that gives low energy, which means energy consumption, which means I'm going to be saving a lot of money. That's economic, right? Are people going to go blind gradually because of that new lighting system, because they are not seeing well? Good. Are they going to start having eye defects? That is a consideration I need to make before I conclude on such initiative. Is the initiative that's producing a positive effect from the environmental standpoint having a negative impact on occupant productivity? Oh well, we have implemented new processes to ensure that our carbon footprint goes down. So nobody will take a ride to the office. We'll all trek, right? And so on and so forth. So we've agreed, but how is that affecting productivity? We come to work and we start sleeping, or we start having ankle pains because we have trekked too much, right? So bottom line here is ask. It's a good idea, but is it bearable? Is the impact on people going to be too negative? And then viable, can the solution be implemented? Will the benefits likely be realized outweigh the cost to implement it? You can't say because you want to be sustainable, make an organization go into loss making and go out of business, because it's only organizations that are in business that can even talk about sustainability in the first place, right? So viability is the intersection between environmental and economic. If we take a look around, we can relate with these startling statistics. Human activities are not sustainable. We are only thinking just far enough to take care of our today. The planet is degrading faster than it can be replenished, so we can relate with this. Our crude and gas resources are being depleted faster. These things took tens of thousands of years to accumulate in the earth crust. We are consuming them within 200 years. And then data is beginning to reveal that global warming is leading to biodiversity loss. Extinction of species is increasing. By 2050, 8% of the world population will be living in cities, slum, unhealthy environment, amongst where those 80% of the world are living is imminent. The UN has forecast that by 2050, 80% of the world's population will live in cities. The world's buildings and the built environment account for a disproportionate amount of world energy usage. We are using almost half of the world energy production in facilities. So we must see this as a data that helps to take us to the forefront of sustainability consideration. So FM leaders must therefore be on the forefront of all sustainability solutions that are being considered. So how do you impact the social bottom line? The work that we do, the initiatives we implement, the results we're trying to show, how do they impact employees, suppliers, and community at large? Are we involved in community initiatives to improve the environment? Or are we ignoring the entire community and using our jeeps and tractors to mess things up for people? Probably using large generators to cause more pollution for poor neighbors. What about the occupants of the facility? Are you concerned about their well-being? Because that is a cardinal function or accountability of the facility manager. What about the environment? Is it feeling healthier? Can you feel healthier in your environment? Can you feel safer? Are you providing safety to the people that work in your organization? Because every time you have an impact on one or more persons or group of people, you have an impact on the organization as a whole. If people can be healthy, can think straight, can be productive, the mission is going to succeed. That's why it's a bottom line. Environmental footprint. How are we reducing our impact on the environment or harming the environment? Consumption of energy. Look, you can consume as much energy as you want, provided that you are using it to provide, create production or utility or value, right? Now, even in doing that, the unit or the ratio that is performance of energy is how much energy is used to produce a unit of service, a unit of product. That must be continuously reduced to show that we're being sustainable. And then also think about how to use renewable sources instead of tapping into fossil all the time. Reduce waste. Our waste, in terms of volume and type of waste, affects the environment negatively. Recycle and reuse as much as possible. Decrease the organization's footprint, decrease or eliminate hazardous materials. So much in terms of hazardous materials in our spaces. We use everything from glues to fumigants to cooling agents in our compressors, mercury in our lights. Just name it. We have asbestos in our insulations, and so on and so forth. We have chlorine in treatment chemicals and so on. So we need to find ways to keep using as little as possible of those chemicals and reduce the impact of those chemicals on the environment through how we waste the leftovers. And then create building processes that abolish toxic materials. Economic measures, we cannot relate with this. How much money are we making? The profitability equation is very simple. Revenue less expenses is equal to profit. We are talking about two levers for profitability, revenue and expenses. The FM sits squarely on the expenses lever. If you spend a lot, the profitability should go where? Up or down? Down. If your expenses are too high, profitability goes down. So if I want to affect profitability or save costs, I must save costs, right? I must be I'm impacting on the economic bottom line by ensuring that I have higher ROI, return on investment, higher efficiency, long-term savings, lower operating costs, and increase asset value. Sustainability has to align with corporate objectives. We can be talking sustainability like this, and some companies are wondering, what are these guys talking about? We are still at the basic level of survival. We are not talking sustainability yet. It doesn't mean that you as the FM should not learn sustainability. What you need to learn about sustainability is how you can introduce sustainability as a way to achieve corporate objectives. So you learn corporate objectives and you know what sustainability is about, right? And you say, how can I work with sustainability in such a way that I can achieve my corporate organization? How does sustainability fit within your organization's mission, values, and corporate objectives? Is it embedded? If it is, lucky you, right? If the company is paying lip service to sustainability, how do you relate? It has to be a way of life. There has to be a commitment at all levels, from the top to the bottom. And then it should begin with senior leadership. If that is not the case, it should begin with you as an insurgent. There are two ways you can come into implementing sustainability in your organization. You can come in because senior management have picked it up, start talking about it, start saying we have to be sustainable, and you ride on that and you create sustainability measures and activities, innovative activities and projects to help reduce your organization's impact on the environment and people while increasing profitability. You're doing that. But if that is not the case, with your knowledge of sustainability, you should start immediately by creating some initiatives to change some ways that you currently work. There are some things you currently do that are really, stretching this whole waste, stretching the material we're using in terms of volume and quantity and toxicity and so on. Start making some subtle changes. As someone who is coming to sustainability from an insurgent point, you make progress, and you can use that progress to get buy-in from senior management for wider company-wide deployments of sustainability initiatives. Okay, so get one or two persons who understands sustainability, who's willing to work with you into a small ad hoc committee, and start from where you are. Where you are is understanding the baseline of your sustainability measure. For example, have metrics for how much energy you use per whatever. Energy per person, energy per square meter, energy per hour of this, energy per kilowatt hour, diesel spent per kilowatt hours, water used per day divided by total number of people who come into the building is water used in liters per person, right? Materials used for cleaning is, how many kilograms, how many liters, how many square meters do you have, how many square meters per liter, how much you spend on diesel and spend on electricity to produce a single kilowatt of electricity. You have to know those baselines. Some people don't even have basic data about how they are managing their facility, and they start talking about sustainability. No. Start by knowing simple things. How many kilograms of waste do you generate, for example, right? And having certain metrics to break that down. We are 100 here, we are delivering 2 tons of waste. That means each person is generating 2 kilograms or 20 kilograms per month, right? So what can we do from that understanding? That's what we're talking about. That's where to start. Sustainability metrics. Start gathering data. If you don't have a scale, go and get a scale. If you don't have a meter, go and install a meter. That's the beginning of sustainability, because all of those waking up one day to start buying bins for segregation and buying an incinerator that traps carbon and investing, it doesn't just make sense until you know what your baseline is. Somebody wants to do recycling, doesn't know how much kilogram he generates of paper. He'd not even be doing segregation in the first place, right? He'd not even be doing weighing of his total waste consignment. How do you want to start doing sustainability measure? Okay, so water, heat, steam, cooling, waste recommendations, to name a few, you must know exactly where you are on all of those metrics, okay? Once an initiative comes into mind to implement, you can now set goals based on the baseline to say, I want us to save 10% of our waste, reduce it by 10%. Reducing our waste volume by 10%, because I know that it's 2 tons, it means I have to bring it down to 1.8 tons within a certain given time. That is a goal I can work with, right? Reducing toxicity in my facility. I don't want to have mercury anywhere. That is a goal I can work with. I have 200 light bulbs that are mercury infused. How can I start phasing them out if I cannot even get money for a project to replace all of them? I can phase them out by gradually changing them out into LEDs or other forms of lighting to reduce my exposure to that toxic mercury content, right? So once you've known what your baselines are, you start with what we call the low-hanging fruits. When you open a carton, put all the carton waste separately, right? When you take trash out of every office, as you are emptying it out, all the paper waste, just manually remove them and put them inside a shredder compartment and so on. Very simple. If I'm changing light bulbs, instead of buying fluorescent tubes to replace fluorescent tube, I'll start buying LEDs and taking lights off certain segments of my facility to store and use to fix other areas fluorescent is going out while I change this section to LEDs. Next month, I'm buying the light bulbs I'm going to be using to make replacement. I take out all of the mercury from another room and then I put these LEDs. I use those ones. I just do things in a very slow but steady progress path, so that I don't just wake up and drop a budget and say, hey, I need to spend 12 million in sustainability. They taught us about sustainability. You start somewhere. And as you achieve results, you are documenting, you are weighing, you are counting, you are measuring, you are metering. Those data that you generate from initiatives that do not even require you to spend huge sums of money to implement become the impetus, become the driver for management taking you seriously and say, you know what, let's invest this amount. Again, you already generated data from baseline, you generated data from low-hanging fruit success. So scaling becomes a piece of cake. So how you get people connected to sustainability matters a lot. You can talk about it purely as an academic program or something you just learned, and nobody, takes it seriously, right? So you begin to showcase through your own action that you want to be sustainable. You begin to cut things down yourself. No facility manager that adopts sustainability within his own work area and starts becoming efficient in his space is ever fired when the company is going down. In fact, you will be consulted to help the organization tighten its belt and streamline. Every time an organization is trying to tighten its belt, they normally look at the FM. The FM is the one that spends, that nobody knows why they are spending. There's no clarity as to why we spend the money we spend in FM. So they come for us straight. They cut staff, they squeeze on our service contracts, and they do all kinds of stuff, externally influencing our operations. Whereas we can take control of that process by using, both in word and action, communicate that we are showcasing sustainability in all that we do. So some practical steps. Get buy-in and engagement, get senior management. Sometimes you have these sustainability ideas, you have initiatives, you don't just jump into it. You gauge the pulse of the organization, you identify one or two senior directors in the organization who you can sell it to get their buy-in. It's very important, because if they don't give you support, then you cannot gauge whether the organization is going to implement any of the ideas you're bringing. You just end up backing against the wrong tree. Cast the vision. Let there be a sustainability picture, a sustainable operations endpoint. If we become sustainable, what I use will be XY metrics. We become sustainable, our energy sources will be AB. Our energy used per whatever, per person, per operation, or per activity, or per square meter would be XY. That is the way you create the vision. You set objectives that must be achieved. That is the beginning. Then you begin to identify roles, who will play certain roles within the organization, within your team, within those you are brought in from or other departments. You start thinking about sustainability in terms of what we will deliver to the organization as a team of committed staff or loyalists to that organization. All right, and then develop a sustainability hierarchy. Identify short-term, mid-term, and long-term sustainable practices that your FM organization and host organization can implement and accomplish. Implement them in milestones, identify obstacles, and note them and learn from them. And as you achieve successes, you just checked your electricity bill through the sub-metering where you have installed, and you realize that you have saved 5%, even if it's just 5% of the kilowatt hours consumed compared to last month. Please blow your trumpets. let everyone who has been part of it be recognized. That is how momentum can easily be built when moving on the path of sustainability. Give yourself time, patience, perseverance, coupled with ruthless focus will help you deploy sustainable solutions to your organization. Let's take a look at energy as a part of sustainability, but it's a key part of what we deliver. And energy is actually making or breaking organizations right now. Okay, when energy costs go up, you can trace it to the cost of delivering every unit of service of good. But how quickly can you as a business raise your own cost? How quickly can you reflect that energy cost on the organization? Because that's exactly what happens when we have FM operations and we have changes beyond our control. Nobody would have said certain unforeseen circumstances will make us unable to generate as a country how many barrels of oil per day, or still be flaring gas instead of gathering it for use, or there'll be Ukraine war with Russia, and then that war is now leading to logistics issues that's causing complications in our supply chains, and prices are going up, right? Nobody can foresee everything, but we can become sustainable deliberately by anchoring ourselves on renewable and perpetual sources of energy that is not subject to such fluctuation, both at the global and local market. It's only when you are, you are at the mercy of fossil fuels, petroleum products, that you have to deal with these sudden fluctuations. If you are taking perpetual sources like renewable solar, solar is actually a perpetual source. I can't really call it renewable because it just keeps giving, right? If you have a hydro, natural hydro, and you put a turbine there, it just keeps giving because the water just keeps running through it. And the nuclear too also have their advantages in terms of continuously recycling the same atoms or elements that are being broken or being fused to generate electricity. For us as facility managers, please look at the mix of your energy. It's not possible to be practical to move away from fossil fuel completely, right? It's not practical. Even the highest rated sustainable buildings today, especially large commercial multi-tenanted facilities, still will have a backup generator that is powered either by gas, fossil or diesel, right? But you can reduce the proportion of that you consume. Think about it. If we have power coming from our national grid, there were times in this country where we did not even have gas-fired plants. It was all coming from 1, 2, about 3 hydro plants, across the country. That was 100% renewable or perpetual source. That was how sweet it was for us then, right? But we take solace in the fact that gas that's coming to the mix now is a bit more sustainable because the gas does not give as much terrible emission as the diesel or LPFO that we use as alternate sources, or even petrol to generate energy. So think about how to balance it. What can we do to move more of our critical loads to renewable sources, right? And reduce the sizes and the volume of consumption for the non-renewable sources as much as possible. The purpose of energy management is to improve energy performance, not to reduce energy consumption. I always talk about be careful of what you measure. What you measure should not always be absolutes. It should be metrics. Performance is a metric. If I use 1,000 kilowatts of energy and I use to serve 1,000 people in my facility, it is 1 kilowatt hour per person, per day, per week, per month, whatever that period of performance analysis is. if I'm always tracking that, I'm doing everything to reduce that 1 kilowatt to 0.98 to 0.95 to 0.90 to 0.85, and I'm improving on that metric. That is improving energy performance. My building footfall, take a mall, for example, can increase. I want it to increase. I want the school numbers, people in the school to increase. The total of my consumption should also increase, but not at the same rate as the increase in productivity. That is what we're talking about performance. So 1,000 people served with 1,000 kilowatt hour of energy, and that increased to 2,000 people. Should my energy consumption also increase to 2,000 kilowatts? No. That's where performance is measured, right? So I'm working to reduce energy use per person, but I'm happy to use more because I'm producing more, because the people that come in represent, I mean, if you're managing a mall, for example, everywhere that come in represents an amount that the mall is supposed to earn from that footfall. And I want that to increase. When occupancy is high, pressure increases, energy consumption is bound to go up with it, and CO2 emission also grow as well. What's important that you continue to improve your energy performance as you increase energy consumption. The goal is to improve performance, which can be measured in terms of cost, absolute use, or with various energy use ratios, so that kilowatt hours per organizational units, per person, per space, whatever. So in summary, use less energy per production, per service. Use more energy derived from renewable sources. Use energy in a more socially and environmentally responsible manner. The fact that you can afford it does not mean that you should waste it or use it. I'm going to have a party in my garden, and because it's a hot day, I get guys to come and install 10-ton standalone central units all over the garden to keep people cool, right? People are sitting in garden chairs outside, and I have a massive AC guzzling so much energy, trying to blast air on them. What am I trying to do? I'm going to prove that I can afford it. But is that sustainable? Absolutely not sustainable. You must understand your facility energy consumption and purchasing. Many of us have point load meters, skipper meters. Many of us have contracts with, what do you call them nowadays? IPPs that have minimum take or pay clauses in them. And we just keep paying the bill. When they send us a bill, we pay it. We don't even understand how the bills are calculated. How much is your kilowatt hour of cost? Do you have a varying rate for day and night? Do you have understanding of how your peak load consumption affects your maximum demand billing? Think about your building systems. Your core building systems have a huge impact on energy consumption. Every time you hear squeaky, squeaky, squeaky noise going on inside an air conditioner, it is using extra energy to produce that noise, and you don't want to be paying for that noise because you don't even want the noise in the first place, right? Every time something heats up in your electrical system or your mechanical system, is energy that is being converted. Every time your equipment becomes less efficient, they draw more energy to be able to serve you. And every time you're trying to cool your interior spaces, and someone can feel that coolness outside, maybe by touching a window and feel that the window is cold, that is trying to cool the garden, like I always say. Your building systems must be maintained to be efficient. Nowadays, we're even talking about using energy efficiency ratios to decide on what mechanical systems to acquire. If you think that the difference between a 2 horsepower AC that is energy efficient and the one that is not energy efficient is too much, I can't go and spend 300,000 buying a 2 horsepower AC because of energy efficiency. Calculate the life cycle cost of running that AC for the next 2-3 years. And you can tell yourself again, if after doing that analysis, I use a 5-year rule of thumb when doing those kind of analysis. I'll ask myself if in 5 years, this difference will still make any sense. Because by the time I've finished running my ACs, in fact, 2 years cost of running your ACs is more than twice the amount of money you spend buying it. If you want to do, just check it. A 2 kilowatts AC running for 1 hour at how much do you pay for electricity from public supply, which is the cheapest still now, 40, 50 naira. It means that for 1 hour, that AC consumes 100 naira. And for 1 day, one AC that runs for probably 10 hours is going to consume 1,000 naira. Multiply that by the number of ACs, or just take that one AC and do your analysis, 1,000 naira per day. In 1 year, that AC that runs for 10 hours will consume over 300,000. How much did you buy the AC? That's our reality. But we don't always pay that information. We don't think of it that way. So if an AC that is supposed to be doing 2 kilowatt hours as energy consumed per hour is now doing 2.4 because it is struggling. It wasn't clean, the vents were dirty, certain things are plugged here and there. That extra 4.4 is about 20% of that cost. Multiply that, work that against your 1,000 per day. That means you are losing 200 naira per day. In 1 year, how much is that? So that's the truth about our building systems. We need to face our building system. When you are not able to create proper insulation, why are you trying to cool? Because when you're trying to cool, the cooling is being felt or received outside, you're wasting that energy. And then occupants and their habits and their behaviors becomes a huge drain on your facility, energy use. Some people will leave things running forever. I know some guys that never switch off their laptops. They've never switched off. Why? They have all kinds of tabs open. You may think that's a small energy use. Every time you leave it idle, it drains gradually, and when you get back to work, it powers and charges back again. That's a waste. So many things that you can think of in your building use and occupancy. Many of them will not put off ACs. Why? Oh, I'm going to pray. I'll be back in the next 1 hour, or I'm on break. I'll be back in 1 hour, and you leave the AC running for 1 hour. Think about the number of ACs you have in your facility just for break time, leaving it on alone, how much you lose. Let alone those that are left on overnight. And energy is choking us, but it's still like a hidden iceberg. We look at our profit of the organization, and most organizations are not making as much as they spend on energy as their profits at the end of the year. The company will say, oh, we made 200 million as profit, 59 million as profit. Their energy bill for operating the company is either equal to or higher than that profit they make at the end of the year. If you are able to save 10% of your energy, 20%, 30% of your energy consumed, it's a direct injection into profits. So you can see there. Beginning place to start, ladies and gentlemen, is you must understand how your site uses energy. Conduct an energy audit. Good enough, we have, Max-Migold has a team that can help you walk through your energy audit. It helps to develop your energy load profile. Because you cannot start managing and reducing and creating efficiency in a system you don't understand. You don't know exactly what is consuming energy right now. So how can you manage it? People just wake up and go and buy LED bulbs and change all their lights and say, we have done energy efficiency. How much of your energy, how many percentage of your energy consumption was actually going into lights? Some have certain water faucets and pipes that are leaking that is keeping that automatic pump always running. Rooms and spaces where you have air conditioning on, and those rooms are always open, or the windows or some holes are making the cooling to go out, and the compressors are working over time. If you've not done any of those audits, you don't even know exactly where your energy is being spent. There are some non-value adding activities and spaces that you consume energy on, huge amount of energy, without even asking what are we getting for this. If you manage a church, for example, you have a large auditorium and a few guys come in during the week to come and do one or two things, and they put on the central chiller system. What value is what they are doing, the few of them that enter that hall, compared to the kind of cost that huge central chiller system will consume? We're not relating activities, return on investment. We just keep doing it. Oh, so I have to stay late. There's an important report I have to do. Please leave the gen running. 200 kVA generator is running for 2 people to be working late. Have you thought about that? How important is that work that couldn't have been done while others were working? Or how else could you have done that job without having to run your 200 kVA extra on site? It all goes into the thinking of what energy consumption should be and does to us. So think in terms of the audits. Data audit is basically to gather data, data on how energy is being used, data on our maintenance practices, and how those equipment are not efficient because of poor maintenance affecting energy, data on building installation and building efficiency, data on how equipment are converting energy into forms of energy that we don't need, noise, vibration, heating, and so on and so forth. That's what it does, right? So beyond visual inspections, we also do thermography. So we will look at your building at peak time, and we do thermal imaging of all the windows and doors to see how your cooling is being released. We do metering at circuit levels. So we can meter to the point where we know exactly how much kilowatts is being used by a certain bulb, a certain fridge, a certain freezer, a certain air conditioner, and so on. So we develop a load profile, a pattern of use for a certain period. And if you want to advance that into a sub-metering system where you can continuously gather data on how various departments, various units, various individuals are using energy in your facility, then you can set that whole system up permanently as your energy management system in your facility to keep getting the data that helps you make decisions to cut down energy use. I can tell you, just because of this audit and this sub-metering or micro-level monitoring of energy use, you can reduce your energy consumption by up to 30%. We've not done any audit for any organization that we couldn't save up to 45% yet of energy use. Think about how much your organization spends on energy. Then work out 45% of that. Put it beside your organization's profitability for the last 3 years. And you can only imagine how much that profitability will be because of how much you have saved from energy. So you document the things that are sometimes ignored in the organization, energy being used on site per year, facility buildings use, the ones that use more energy, where you can save from, and then all those maintenance adjustments, operational adjustments, and changes you can make to ensure that energy use is reduced or made more efficient. And then for those of us who who manage large sites, those meters, they call them all kinds of names, skipper meters, MD meters, and the rest. They have a factor of your peak worked into your bill. And that factor is substantial. The way billing is done, if you have your own transformer in any of these discos in Nigeria right now, is that you are not billed like other small users who are billed for what is under the curve. What's under the curve is if you use I'm trying to find a person that is not muted and it's right outside. if you use 20 kilowatts by 9, between 9 and 10, and you use 40 kilowatts between 10 and 11, that's how your bill is calculated in a straight line, straightforward arrangement. Whatever you use per minute per hour is what is added. So it's arithmetically added, right? But if you are on any of this kind of billing that I just mentioned, your peak is taken as a factor and applied on whatever you consume throughout the day. Imagine using 10 kilowatts for 10 hours, using 100 kilowatts for 1 hour, using 10 kilowatts again for another 13 hours. And then they now take that factor of that peak. The reason they do that really is, if you're a large consumer, it's expected that the power plant supplying your district or your area has to hold enough capacity to serve you. And because of that, there's a capital cost to expanding capacity to serve very large users. They make them pay a factor of their peak, which is used to determine the sizing of the generation or distribution companies' capacity or assets that must be used. Imagine if you, as a big user, let's say you are a 50% user, and they have, instead of doing a 1 MVA power plant to feed your district, because you are a 500 kilowatt hour consumer, a 0.5 MVA, they had to increase their size to 1.5. Now, what it means is that anything you switch off, they'll be down to about 60% utilization, just because you alone switch off. So because of that, for building capacity to accommodate you, they will put a factor of your peak. And that peak is what makes your bill go up. So there are two strategies for managing the peak. You can use load shedding. Load shedding means switching off loads at a certain period that is around your peak to drop your peak. You're not moving the loads elsewhere. 200 of you in this office will have to go on break. I'm sorry, break time is break time. So for that period, we are shutting down all the chiller systems, and shutting down 90% of all the lights, and shutting down systems that are not supposed to be working because we are on what? Break time. That is load shedding. That load is canceled. But load shifting refers to transferring certain loads away from peak. You can do this very easily by scheduling certain processes, taking them from automation. I see a lot of treatment, water treatment systems, sewage treatment plants, water pumps and the rest, all automated. If it drops by 20%, the pump should peak and fill it back immediately. Wait a minute. But it drops often during peak period where hundreds of toilets are being flushed and people are running water to wash their hands everywhere. So it will drop during that period, and that's the time it peaks. And that is the time you have the highest load in the facility. Your pumps, your sewage plants are also automated to also peak during that time. So what good have you done with that technology? If you change that to a timer switch that makes sure that all pumps, all tanks are filled up in the evening and filled up again in the morning, so that in the peak time, pumps don't need to be automated to start running. Your sewage plants can hold all the sewage used during the day and process them at night. So even if you don't have varying rates, you know, some countries have day rates and night rates, so you can move all your load, your washing, your downloads and whatever you want to do, Bitcoin mining, whatever it is, you move to the night where the energy cost is cheaper, because the power plant will keep running around the clock, right? So they want to move people as much as possible to off-peak periods. So they give you a lesser rate to induce your activity at that time, to create a kind of a balance for their generation and distribution equipment. but we haven't quite arrived at that yet. But then you can reduce your overall bill just by load shedding and load shifting using the techniques I've taught in this class so far. And then optimize facility energy use. Look at the macro issues like your building fabric. Are the windows airtight? Look at how much insulation you have built into your facility. Look at your building systems. The building systems, how efficient are they? The chiller systems, the ducting system, all of those, how efficient are they? What kind of retrofit or renovations you can do to make them more effective so they can reduce energy consumption. And then look at the micro aspects, all those equipment that are left on, chargers, TVs, fridges with nothing inside, so many things that we just leave running, because I don't know, nobody wants to put them off or something, right? And then on your maintenance side, you have very, very bad practices among electricians, poor connections, undersized conductors, low power factor, voltage imbalances, leaking insulation. Every one of these increases your energy use, and those energy you are using to what they are using to try to stay afloat and run, they are not providing value. An undersized conductor, for example, will draw as much energy as it wants to feed whatever is the load source, right? And as it's doing that with that undersized capacity, it is heating up. You're not only afraid of fire, you are also afraid of the energy you are consuming to heat up that cable. Why do you want the cable heated up at a cost? So, and our metering solutions nowadays are really not intrusive. We try to use CTs. CTs are little, logs that are hung around cables, and they sense using magnetic interference just to pick the flow of currents and identify voltage, resonance, resistivity, so many other electricity parameters from what's running in the line, and give you all of that data in dashboards, real time, round the clock. You can log into our platforms to see how energy is being consumed, at any time, real time. You can be at home and say, let me just check if security guards are chilling inside the conference room. They're going to put on the big chiller, and then they will chill there till around 6 or 5 in the morning, and then they put it off and go and stand in the gate, and you think that's where they've been all day, all night, right? But when you look at your energy bill, you're wondering what's making your energy bill to go up, okay? But just that ability to see transparently what's happening with energy consumption can be powerful. Helps you make decisions about upgrading systems, helps you become more accountable. If you are doing chargeback system, you know how to charge various units of consumers. Many of us are still used to a service charge arrangement that evens things out. It's not helpful, it's not equitable. You should have a metering system that identifies what is actually going where in your organization, and then it helps you guide your maintenance decisions. If you want to make a case for replacement of an epileptic equipment, a noisy or heating up equipment, that's not very efficient, you can use the energy use differential to make that case. If you run this equipment for another 3 years, this is how much energy wastage we will experience. If you put that money into a new equipment, we will enjoy the service better. We will save so much because it's going to be consuming this much. You can give numbers to management. Not, we feel if we get new one, we're going to save money. No. That's not what we're talking about. You should actually use numbers because you have done the assessment. You have done the evaluation of audits, and you have done a metering system that gave you those objective data. All right, so that's our lesson. Let's have a discussion. This is supposed to be a very important lesson. I know it affects all of you, so I believe everybody's hand should go up. Okay, Abayomi, let's start from you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, sir. Thanks for the lecture, sir. But there's something that I'm not clear about. You said something about a facility that has its own dedicated transformer, that the billing will be based on the highest consumption, yes, on the peak consumption during the day. Sorry, I didn't get that clearly. I want you to help us go over it again, sir.
If you are in such a facility, try to read your meter. You see you cannot read it. If you are in a single phase or three-phase meter, you will find that take those analog meters those days, you will see the reading, right? You will see as it is using, you will see 1 kilowatt has been used. Another one, if you use much to be fast, if you use less to be slow. It's straightforward. If your meter was at 16,100 at the beginning of the month, when it is at the end of the month, it's 16,600. It means you've consumed 500 kilowatt hours. It's straightforward. But people on skipper meters, MD meters, because they have their own point load, because they have their own transformer installed, the meter you are given is a special meter that only the guys from the discos can read. And that's because the meter is adding a factor of your peak to your normal consumption. And that's what you need to be mindful of. So if you are in any of such environments where you have a skipper meter or you have a MD meter, whatever they call it these days, just know that your peak is affecting your consumption. If you manage your peak, your consumption should go down. That's the point I'm trying to make you understand.
Okay, it's clear, sir. Thank you, sir.
I lived in an estate in the mainland here once where we had to donate our transformer to a co-disco. Come and take the transformer. We don't want to have combined billing again. Give every apartment their meter and you own the transformer and self-distribute with the transformer so that we no longer get that huge bill that comes at the end of the month. That's exactly what we had to do. Sign it off. It's yours. We don't own it. We don't want transformer. We just want meter for every unit. And so no longer use of maximum demand billing for us.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Who's going next? All right, Kazim.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the lecture, sir. So my question is, in a facility that we have about more than 2 occupants there, we have separate meters that measures energy when there is a utility. But in the case of generator, we don't have such. I want to know what advice or how can we do that? Because some people complain that I'm not always at home. Why are you sharing? Because what I do is I share the diesel, this thing, I share it equally among everybody. Whether you are around, whether you are not around, you buy it together, and that is you pay the same amount.
You might need to use a ratio of their consumption to share the diesel, right? If that's more equitable, actually. If somebody consumes 1,000 units of electricity from the public grid, right? Another person consumes 100 units from the public grid. There's no reason for you to share their diesel consumption equally.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason. The person who consumed 1,000 from the public grid should get that ratio of the diesel consumed, because you are providing them round-the-clock power, right? And he's using substantially higher than his neighbor. They cannot be on the same category. So try and implement some equitable distribution of that diesel consumption for a start. If you have a wiring in place to do dual metering, it will be helpful. Dual metering, there are meters now that do dual reading, right? It reads public supply, it reads generator use. So you can actually have 2 bills or 2 accounts for each person, right? Some estates even just deploy separate meters, 1 meter for public supply, 1 meter for generator, and they send you a bill based on those consumption. But then they run into another problem. people learn that the generator rate is higher and the public supply rate is cheaper. So whenever they switch off, they change to generator, they switch off everything in their houses, right? So they don't have to use the generator load. So their generator reading will be very low. And then at the end of the day, you can't recover your costs because the generator capacity will not be able to, what you are spending on your generator, you won't be able to recoup it from the units that have been charged on that, everybody switching off, right? So that becomes an issue. So the best way to go about that is two things. One, you can use a hybrid rate where you have factored in public supply costs, public supply rate multiplied by percentage availability of public supply and then you add that to generator rates multiplied by percentage availability of generator use, right? And then you now come up with a unified rate. How do you come up with generator rates? You take a factor for the equipment, which is amortized. If the equipment is 10 million, you're going to run it over 20 months before its useful life is over. You say, okay, the generator uses 500,000 per month. Diesel expenses, maintenance expenses, operator expenses. You add all of those up and you divide it by the kilowatt hour taken out of the gen. So that means you have to have a meter that meters what the gen gives out on a regular basis. So that way, you know what total that was taken out. That total is what you are going to use to divide your costs that we just talked about, amortized equipment, maintenance, fueling, operator costs. You know, you put all of those together, you now divide that, you now know how much a kilowatt hour cost from generator this month. That amount is what you are going to use, that rate is what you're going to use to work as a factor of what each person consumed in their public supply meter. So if I arrive that amount to be 120 this month, for example, for those of you who are still doing billing, then, I mean sharing rather, then I now say 120 is the rate. If you spend 1,000 kilowatts in public supply, of course you would pay that bill, right? I know how many kilowatts it is. The next man spend 200 and so on and so forth. I will add up all what you guys used from the public supply. I know what the total is. I'll add up, I know my total kilowatt consumed from the generator. I know what the total is. I've used that to produce a rate. I now use that rate to multiply a ratio of what you consume over. So if you do 1,000 out of total 2,000, that means you have 50% of my costs, right? So I will now use that as a factor on your bill. So when you see your bill, if your public supply use is high, your generator use will also be what? High. So that's a way to do it if you are not metering all through dual or double. Juliana, your question.
All right, sir. Thank you for the class. Okay, I just wanted to ask how does the number of staffs in the office affect the energy consumption? Like some offices, the building I know that has above 5,000 workers, and then some of them also do nights. So how does it affect?
It's heat load. Everybody that goes into a space that the AC cools is heat load. That's what that's basically what it is. You understand?
Okay. Okay.
So we introduce heat into the space and the AC tries to absorb the heat. So if there are few, think about it. If you put an AC on, a 1 horsepower AC, and you are just 2 in the room, you'll be freezing. Bring 40 more people into that room. Let them just be talking, even not dancing or doing anything aggressive. Within 15, 20 minutes, 1 horsepower will be as if they switch it off. The heat load has increased. The AC is now struggling. Compressor is now working around the clock. It's still not cooling. so that's the whole thing. So as you increase heat load in the space, you have, and then take for, I was in the function, I've been in 2 functions at Sheraton Abuja recently, and the place is always hot. The ACs are inefficient. People are many in these rooms, and yet they bring these buffets that are, you know, you put a fire under about 100 pots of food inside the hall. So we are sweating. The heat is from the body already. It's overwhelming the ACs. And then you have this candle light lit under hot water that's used to warm food, around the hall. It's almost as if we're in an oven. It's heat load. The ACs respond to heat by trying to absorb it.
Okay.
And the more heat, the more they work to try to absorb, and the more energy they consume.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Juliana, you're no longer there.
Yes. I've asked my question and you have answered me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you have another one. Shoot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, sir, with respect to the question that was asked before this last one from Juliana.
Yes.
So I've seen in practice, most especially it's common among the estate surveyors managing multi-tenanted apartments to use a floor space being occupied by tenants to allocate, to distribute utility bills, as in electricity bills for generator and the one from the grid.
Yes, that's a common practice. It's a very bad practice, actually.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Is it a right practice or is it?
No, it's very bad. Not equitable at all. So if I occupy a large space, just me and my secretary, for example, you will now give me 10 times what someone else has 50 people inside his office whereas the energy used, all of them will flush toilets, and every liter of water costs energy to pump, isn't it? All of them will have body in heat in the space that air conditioning will cool down, and so on and so forth. So really, it's a very bad practice. So you use metering is the only way to do it that's equitable. You get a metering of what you actually consume and use that as a factor to take care of your common area use. Beyond that, you now need to use actual consumption. You don't have to use square meters. If I'm going to do anything because I can't meter or have all kinds of issues with arriving at actual bills, what I will do is I will take the load profile of a typical tenant. I can do load profiling for everybody and run it through a month in an energy audit. I'll arrive at what they typically use based on that load profile from the energy audit. If I tell them I'm doing an energy audit and they switch things off, I won't tell them. I'll just meter them at the consumer unit or panel point, where I'll just tag all of them into these meters, like data loggers that you know of in energy audits, and then I'll take all the data over time. Day and night use will be accumulated. Then I'll show them the results. If I don't have a way of metering, but of course, the best thing, ladies and gentlemen, is to meter, okay? Oluwayemi.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Concerning the issue of, for instance, generator.
Yes.
Is it more load, more consumption of diesel? For instance, you see, when you are using a car, now they tell you that when you put on a car AC, then it tends to consume more. So is it more load, more consumption of the diesel?
It's the same thing with generator. If your generator is operating at 30-40% load, the diesel consumption is less. Now when it's operating at 80-90% load, it's normal. More load, more consumption. It draws more energy to feed that load. But we don't also encourage you to have a big generator and start using it at low capacity, because that destroys the engine on its own. So you have to be cautious. So you have to have right sizing. For those of you who are managing estates, do not use one number like, oh, we have 1,000 units, let's do 30 kilowatts per unit and use that to multiply 1,000, and then we'll go and get 3 MVA, 1 unit. No, don't do that. It's a bad practice that is still happening. Most of your residential estates are oversized in terms of engine size. And because they're oversized, you are wasting a lot of energy and killing those engines faster. So the best thing to do is to have a synchronized array of smaller generators that are progressive in terms of size and scope. So I can have a need for 1 MVA, 1000 kVA capacity, right? But I will have 2 or 3 150 kVA, 2 or 3 250 kVA, right? And I'll set up a synchronizing panel that lets the generators pick one after the other as load is increasing. So if a certain generator that starts is at 60%, once it's crossing over to 80 to 85, 90%, the next gen warms up and kicks in and shares the load. And as the load increases, the next gen picks up. You will find out that at no time will you use 1000 kVA at once. Especially when you're in estates where people are beginning to switch off things just to save on their monthly bill. The generator you use will just kill your operational costs because they're oversized. All right, so that's the last question, I think. Anyone else? Okay, I hope we learned something. I hope we can put this immediately to use. As a recap, go and do your basics, go and do your baselines, all your sustainability metrics, go and write them down, know how much energy you are using, energy performance ratios, know your waste production, know how many kilograms of each type of waste if you can, take an inventory of all the toxic equipment in your sites to streamline how they are disposed of, how to reduce them. Look at the waste that you generate, look at the processes as a business, and start making changes now because you have learned from today's class. Okay. I see a hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, please. One more question, please. How do we measure our waste?
Weigh it.
Yes, our waste.
Weigh it. Put a scale.
Okay.
You know those scales that has a hook under it,
okay.
right? Aha. So just put a pole up over your waste receptacle and hang that scale there. As you are bringing the bag to throw away, you hang the bag on it, you write it down. You have a note somewhere where you're writing it down. Once that one is carry the next one come, you hang it, you record it, and that's how you do it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day, sir.